You touched on the size of the field, 42 bikes, huge field. Bless you. But you know, big fields. There have been lots of crashes this year. You started from pole at Le Mans. What do you think fans can expect here this weekend from the Moto2 class? Something they haven't seen before here.
Yeah, pretty much anything. I mean, I started on pole, and that was easy. And then I've started back as far as 34th. And man, when you start back there and you look at the grid in front of you, going into turn one, and the whole first couple laps is pretty sketchy. A lot of the guys back there are kind of desperate. You know, their rides are hanging there on their results. So it's been pretty hairy, especially at the beginning. So it's an exciting for the fans, and it's a place you want to qualify up front in this class.
Also wanted to ask you what Antonio Banderas' role is with the team. Obviously, he's a big-name actor that people will recognize, but is he a fan of the sport as well? What's his involvement?
Yeah, he's a huge fan. I mean, he's obviously not in racing to make money. You know, he loves bikes and he's a big fan. Every time they ask him a question about bikes, he comes, you know, his answer's like 10 minutes long. So he's a big fan and he's cool guy. He's also a busy guy. I've been able to meet him 3 times, and he's been in a couple of tests that we've done. So he's involved in the team, but his main role obviously is the PR and getting the sponsors and everything. But his main reason to doing it is because he just loves bikes.
Roger, I wanted to ask you, the size of these fields. I mean, I think maybe back to Daytona, having a big field like that. Was that the last time you raced in a field of that size?
Yeah, I think so. Daytona was the last time we had over 40 guys in the Supersport race. And after coming here and testing, it just shows how important for me qualifying is going to be, because the first section of the track, turn 2, 3, and 4, is so tight. It's going to be a lot of bumping going through there. So hopefully I'm a little bit closer up the field.
Have you had 2 days of testing here?
Yes, last Thursday and Friday we tested here for 2 days.
And do you have a favorite portion of the track at this point? Corners you like better than others, or?
I really liked turn 1, even though it was a little bit dirty still then. And also in the back, I liked. I think turn 12 is like a real fast, left-hander kink where if you did it right, you could keep the Moto2 bike wide open. So, that was probably my most important. Not most important, but I had fun every time when I get back there trying to see if I could keep the bike wide open or if I had to shut off.
Have you found that there's quite a bit of adjustability in this current Moriwaki chassis? Or have you played around with a lot of that, or is it a standard setup?
We've played around with it everywhere we went. We went to a track called Chuckwalla in California, and then we went to Barber. And really, it seems like we're going into the race weekend with basically what we started with or left the first test with. So, I think the Moto2 bike is pretty much just, man up and ride it. I don't think a lot of the changes really do anything. So, for us, we're back basically where we started at.
Kevin, have you had a chance to ride this race bike yet?
I have not. We only have one, so they hadn't let me get on it.
Do you have any hopes of doing some laps on at least on the chassis, or is that going to go right back after the race is over?
We have to give the engine back 2 hours after the race finishes, or they start charging us money. So there is supposed to be a bit of a test here for the bike on Monday for a magazine, and if I get the opportunity, I'd love to jump out there and do a few laps anyway.
I would expect that you have your leathers.
Yeah, I always carry them with me.
Kevin, I'd like to talk a little bit about MotoGP and the changes that are in the regulations that are expected for 2012. Specifically 1,000 cc, maximum number of cylinders 4, and then bore limited to 81 millimeter. Can you explain what that means?
Well, the MotoGP manufacturers have the same problem that all the rest of us have. They don't have any money. And they needed to continue this show because it brings a lot of excitement to motorcycling in general, specifically in Asia and South America, which have become much more important in the last 2 years for their sales and their survival. And so they go to Dorna and they say, we need to keep this racing going, but we need to pay less for it. Well, if you're building engines that have valves and connecting rods made out of titanium aluminide, and you're trying to figure out ways to use beryllium, you might want a set of rules written for you that just made a lot of that stuff impossible. So this is one step toward a simplified, less expensive kind of GP racing, which is a little bit less like a prototype. You won't find a V5 racing against a triple, racing against a inline four under these new rules, because they're essentially saying what they said in Formula One, which is everybody's going to have a 90-degree V8, and that's it. Also, they thought that if they limited the bore to 81 millimeters, that engines wouldn't be turning 20,000 RPM. And probably giving them a 21-liter fuel allowance is going to be more effective in holding RPM down than that 81 millimeter bore limit. Because right now the 800s have plenty of trouble finishing races on 21 liters. And if you're blowing that 21 liters of fuel into a 1,000 cc engine, you're going to have to be even more careful. So it's going to be a mobile economy run. How fast can you go for how long on this little bit of fuel? And it's going to be maybe a little cheaper for the manufacturers, especially with the 6 engines per rider limit. Because if you're not building 400 engines for your team, you're not ordering 400 sets of those titanium aluminide valves.
This is your first chance to see Moto2 in person. We've talked a lot about it privately. What's your view of the Moto2 class at this point without having actually witnessed it in person?
Well, I witnessed the transition away from 250s and on to 600s in club racing. And it happened a long time ago. It used to be that you could run down to your Yamaha dealer if you were a decent rider, and you could order a TZ250 Yamaha, and you could buy it. And in the very early days, it was $1147 plus destination and setup. That was a long time ago. Then in 1972, it was $1,800, and by 1980, it was $4,500, and by the mid-90s, it was $27,000. Well, that message got out to all the club racers. They stopped going to the Yamaha dealer and ordering a new TZ250 because they could go in the 600 production class or the 600 modified class and get a lot more motorcycle for a lot less money. And in the process, 600 racing became the real basis of future riders that had been 250s. 250s priced themselves out of existence, and all that's happened to the 250 class is that they've put in a 600 class that's had the mechanical guts taken out of it. It has that Honda electric motor in it, or whatever it is, and they're standardized so that they're supposed to run within 1% of each other. And okay, we don't have any money, we want to go racing, this is a way to do it.